I've never met a person so hard on technology than Jerry is. Like, I mean, I will go through some stuff just because I get bored with it. But like, I mean, this is why Jerry's so current all the time. He's not necessarily a cutting edge. He's always got to have the latest. He's got to have the latest because the last one exploded.
It is true. Unfortunately, I have no idea why. It just is what it is.
Well, every time I see Jerry walking into a Best Buy, I buy stock.
You should. You 100% should. Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, I just I don't know how you do it, Jerry. It's fascinating. Tech. It's all the tech. Okay. Well, we do have a fun tech question today. Are we ready to chat about it? Oh, that's how you bring in a Tuesday morning right there. Here we go.
There we go.
CXR Channel, our premier podcast for talent acquisition and talent management. Listen in as the CXR community discusses a wide range of topics focused on attracting, engaging, and retaining the best talent. We're glad you're here.
Oh my goodness. I'm still laughing. There we are. Good morning. How are you, Jerry?
I'm doing better now. Now that I'm actually seeing myself speaking in real time.
Yeah, it works. Whatever you unplugged, it works. I'm glad you did it. Look, everybody, if you just joined us, welcome to the Recruiting Community Podcast. Weekly insights, we like to say they're delivered in the form of conversation. I am your host, Marky, and with me is Mark.
You got to give me a heads up on these so I can look them up and make better responses.
Look, Mark, take it from Marky. That will take all the fun away from it. Plus, I'm excited because we're bringing in the Funky Bunch. We're going to catch up today with our industry friends, Steven Rothberg. Steven is the founder of College Recruiter. We're going to talk a little bit about some regulatory updates, even a lawsuit or two maybe, and some of the risks that a lot of organizations we think are taking when using AI-enabled recruiting technology, and why a job board guy even cares. But a couple things first. We're streaming on the YouTube, the Facebook, the LinkedIn, the Twitch. So hopefully you're watching on one of those, listen to one of those. If you're not, you can also find all of the past and future episode updates and announcements out at cxr.works/podcast. If you happen to be on LinkedIn with us, say hello in the live chat. We'll throw that up on the screen. You can ask a question to Steven today, or Jerry or myself, or you just want to chime in. You got an opinion. Everybody's got one of those and an elbow. Hopefully, but you can go ahead and do that and we'll get you included. A little bit of housekeeping first, Jerry. I want to share a little bit. We announced it and launched this week. We've got our latest report is out.
I love it. The conflict of interest has been it's one of the things that I really think comes up every so often. And it's the first time that I've seen some movement. And I was very pleased with the response that we've gotten, not only so far, but throughout the entire effort to put it together.
Yeah, a lot of fun. We did it. If you happen to be listening, not watching, you can go to cxr.work/COI for conflict of interest. We try to keep it easy, where you can download that report. We partnered with Alex Murphy. He's the CEO founder over there at JobSync. He just did a wonderful job as a co-facilitator. Obviously helped to underwrite that with a modest fee there to help pay for platform costs. But we worked with Alex to form 4 themes that make up this ultimate report that has come out, about 30 or so pages, as well as 30 TA leaders, practitioners in that space, and hundreds of our members within CXR sort of weighing in. And I think also in addition to the download, Jerry, we've attached a rider.
Yep. And I think the rider really puts in position for anyone the kind of questions that every employer should be asking of consultants or analysts or vendors, solutions providers about potential conflict of interest and how to mitigate them. And the baseline for all of this is just full transparency. That's really what we need.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a big one. I think you'll appreciate that whatever level you may be on or at within your organization if you're looking for that. So if you want to check it out, cxr.work/COI. And there's a link within the actual report that you can download. Anybody can download it, by the way. But there's a link in there that you can grab that will take you directly to the rider as well, which is released also. It's our second one, released under Creative Commons license. So you can just grab that and do with it what you will. All right, you ready to welcome Steven back in?
Let's do it.
Okay, Mr. Funky Bunch, how are you?
I'm good. I just want to know, like, is it Marky or Mark or Millie and Vanilli?
Oh, see, I could see now. Millie and Vanilli would have been a good next one. Gerry, if I introduce you as Vanilli, will you say, "Girl, you know it's true"?
I will do something along those lines as long as I know it's coming. I'm just too slow to pick up.
Oh, I beg to differ. Steven, for those who do not have the pleasure of knowing you, can you kind of give us a little bit of an overview? Like, who is Steven Rothberg? What's this guy do?
Sure.
Why should we listen to him today?
Sure, no sweat. So I'm the founder of College Recruiter, a job search site for students and recent grads. We believe that every student and recent grad deserves a great career. We're global at any given time, several million part-time, seasonal internship, and what we call early career postings on our site. Over 1 million students and recent grads use our site a month. And the way we count that is much more conservatively than a lot of sites. It's when we send a candidate to the employer, not just people who are coming to read blog articles and whatever. That's great, but that's not the connection that employers are paying for.
Yeah, I love it. You've been in the space a little while, yeah.
A couple days. I founded a company that College Recruiter grew out of in 91, went online in 96. We were doing things like employment magazines, campus maps, that kind of thing. And by 2000, I could really see that the future of the business was the online job search. And so we closed the print stuff. It was profitable, and that's actually where most of the revenues and most of the profits were coming from. So that was a interesting process. But I think we're on like the 7th or 8th version of our site now. So it's been a journey.
Yeah. It's worth noting that in the almost 30 years ago, I ranked and rated and reviewed Steven's College Recruiter, and I could be sure within 15 minutes of publishing our book, Steven would give me a call.
There's
about how I could improve that rating or review.
So if you flip through your dictionary and go to the T's and find the word tenacious, you may find my photo there.
Not under talent? Come on, it's under talent.
Oh, hell no. We all rise to our own levels of incompetency.
That's the Peter principle. Yes, 100%. One of the only things that stuck in college. Yeah. So Steve, it's fair to say you've been around a while, so you've seen some stuff.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we had talked about sort of jumping on board and diving in was this. I mean, I hate that AI is part of every conversation. It seems like when we're on the trade floor, when we're talking to other leaders, like if they're not implementing it, they're asking questions about it. They're wondering what's going on. So I think from your sort of catbird seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
How has, I'm going to use automation also in here. I'm going to give you a little bit of a break.
Okay.
How would you say that AI technology or automation technology that we're just seeing proliferate throughout the organization, how is that behaving? Well, how's that impacting on hiring platforms like College Recruiter, like yours? Are there unique challenges that's sort of presenting in your segment of the job market, or is it just the same everywhere?
I would say that largely the biggest issues I think apply almost everywhere. It's really hard to find any kind of hiring platform that is not using some kind of automation, whether they call it AI, whether it's actually machine learning. I think a lot of that is just around how we might define it more than anything else. The fact that a vendor is using another vendor's AI I don't think is all that important. Some people kind of say, oh, well, they're not really using AI. And it's actually, yeah, they are. They're using Watson, or something like that. That's not really what's important to me. But the very, very smallest job boards, the mom and pop, hundreds of visitors a month, they have a WordPress kind of a site. They're probably not using any kind of automation or AI. It's the tech is out of 1998. Mm-hmm. But any of the household names, any of the ones that have even tens of thousands of job seekers, for sure hundreds of thousands, for sure millions, there's all of them have AI at some level, some more so than others. And I think there's a massive opportunity there for employers, whether you're talking an ATS, whether you're talking assessment software, whether you're talking a job board, and I include LinkedIn in the job board bucket. There's tremendous opportunity there. And I think that a lot of the folks in talent acquisition this year, 2024, have been awoken to the risks there as well.
It's interesting because I think about these conversations a year ago when this was just sort of just kicking off, and it was all about chatbots and who was going to put a chatbot in, or was the chatbot just going to do scheduling? Well, then, hey, can it do screening? And we've gotten all these places, and so I guess that's kind of what's interesting to me is this evolution of it. But you do raise an interesting point of like the services that you're using are probably using these services already to some degree. And certainly in the job board space, we're talking about algorithms and matching, right?
Absolutely. So the ranking of applicants, the matching, where I'm seeing the biggest use of AI that has both a lot of promise and as well as a lot of risk to TA folks is in the ranking. It's not so much the posting of jobs and a candidate goes to a job search site and runs a search and which jobs come up first and which jobs come up on the 14th page and therefore are essentially invisible. It's more about these 100 candidates have applied. And if we're a large organization, if we're doing high volume hiring, you're never going to look at every one of those resumes. And so which ones are you looking at? The reality is if you're using some vendor's software, it is your process. You can't legally distance yourself and say, oh, that's, SuccessFactors software and a clause in our contract makes SuccessFactor liable. No, you are as well. And I think that's been a realization for a lot of the TA folks this year is that they can't distance themselves or inoculate themselves from bad acts by their vendors. They really need to understand that they own that.
But there's some exceptions to that at this point, correct?
Maybe. It's very unclear. It's very murky. If I were a TA leader, I would be really concerned right now. And part of that is it's easy for lawyers to say, well, if the AI software, if the ranking, the screening software, if they can't show you why one particular candidate ranked higher than another, then just don't use it. If it's black box AI, the problem is it's almost all like that.
Well, I love what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
That you need to be accountable as the employer to asking the right questions, which gets us down to what those questions are. But the point is, there's a reality here that you can't just simply say, if 500, 600 people are interested in my job, just send me the ones that are the best, without having really done your due diligence of understanding how that's going to take place. Because then you've got some really interesting problems as the employer. But if you've asked all those questions and what you get and you delegate to the technology, if you will, to give you the best of those folks that come and interview, if you will, or want to interview. Now you got a problem if you've delegated, and they give you that, and what they're doing may not be what they said they were going to do.
Well, there's an analogy we used that I think still sticks, and that's the guy who does or the gal who does your taxes.
Yeah.
Right. This is the easiest for me to wrap my head around. Right?
This is a brilliant example. Yeah.
I don't necessarily understand how he made all of that work and put all the forms in there and why that number is that number. But at the end of the day, I signed it saying pretty much that I authorized this as my decision and that I support this and that I am accountable to it. Because when the IRS in the US at least comes a knocking, they don't care who put my taxes together. If my John Hancock's on the bottom, it's me who is fully accountable for everything that's within that filing.
Here's the only difference. You have to give that accountant a lot of information about that they now manipulate, bring back to you, and now you hold that accountable. But if you've delegated to an AI, if you will, to match and rank and do all of those kinds of things, and what you get is a small portion of what went into their system, you don't know what you don't know. You don't have the knowledge that they may have eliminated everyone because they went to a specific set of universities that might have discriminated, and you didn't even know that was happening. Then there's some issues relative to that, and I think that's what you're talking about, Steven. There's an awful lot of conversation now about whether there's an agent, for example, or some entity, if you will, that's quite like an agency, but not really. And as a result of that, there's some serious cases coming to the fore.
Yeah. There's a lawsuit right now that if anybody kind of wants to look it up, to me, I think it's really interesting in a lot of different levels, but Mobley, M-O-B as in Bravo, L-E-Y versus Workday. And Mobley's a Black male candidate who says he applied to over 100 jobs with employers using Workday and was rejected by all of them, including at least a couple of the jobs in the middle of the night within minutes. He applied at 1:12 p.m. a.m. and he was rejected at 1:42. And it was kind of like, there's no recruiter likely working in the middle of the night reviewing applications and rejecting it. Now, if it was outsourced to, say, India, right, and then that's the kind of the middle of the day for them, and so it's possible, but it's on the employer to prove that. And that's something that a lot of people don't really appreciate. If those employers using Workday can come back and say, actually, a human being did reject him and I can show that, great. But what I think has probably happened is that Workday has had some rules set up by these employers that it might be some knockout questions, it might be AI, but whatever it is, this candidate was automatically rejected, or they rejected. And I know recruiters hate it, and I'm going to get a whole lot of hate mail here. But the reality is that the way that some employers have their ATS set up, candidates are rejected by the ATS.
It is a dumb argument. Those who say that never happens, that doesn't happen, bullshit. It happens. It's 100% set up differently at a million different organizations in a million different ways. So it does happen. But we've been automating the rejection of candidates for decades.
And automating the rejection of candidates, like Chris, when you were at Pepsi, right? And I think Lincoln was still president. It might have been Garfield. But when you were there and you had automated rejections, right? Like a classic one would be, are you legally allowed to work in this country?
Sure.
Right. And the candidate says no. And you're like,
yes. Or do you have a commercial driver's license? Or do you
okay, you're driving a truck. I don't have a driver's license at all. I don't have a CDL, whatever. It's like, sorry, you're not qualified. There's under no circumstances are you able to be hired for this. I'm not going to send that to a recruiter. I'm going to do the candidate the benefit of rejecting them right away. Maybe you tell them why, maybe you don't. Another story for another day. But there's nothing wrong with that. And you as the employer can document that.
Right.
Sally applied.
100%.
Yeah, right. Sally applied and like, she's not allowed to work in the US. She doesn't have a CDL, whatever it is. The problem with AI, the problem with some of the automation is that employers might not know why that candidate was rejected. And even if they weren't rejected, if you've got 1,000 people applying and you're hiring 20 of them, you might actually only look at 200, 300, 400 of those applications. And if the AI is ranking them and you never get to the worst ones, how can you say that those candidates weren't rejected by the ATI? They're ranked so lowly, nobody's looking at them. And if nobody looks at them and they're not getting hired, that is a rejection.
Yeah, they weren't knocked out per se, but if we also can't explain how they were ranked or what they were ranked on or against, I think that's the extent of the suit is what we're talking about is, well, if I as the employer cannot explain how the ranking took place, that is an element that has to be discussed.
It's a big element, but the critical component here is that really for the first time, the weight of the problem is in Workday's hands as opposed to the employer's hands. If the employer, in fact, set up rules that eliminated him, that would be one thing, but it does not seem when you have 100 different employers who, as you said, Chris, all do it differently, then they have delegated, if you will, to an algorithm that they do not understand to make choices about who goes forward or who's at the top of the list that you're going to reasonably look at. And 100% of the time, he was rejected, including, by the way, to a company that he was actually working for in that role as a contractor. So there's enough evidence and enough conversation in the discussion. There's like 40 pages on fine law about Mobley and this particular decision. But in the end, the courts have decided that there's enough evidence to go forward with the suit, even though some parts of how they've crafted the law have been dismissed, but other parts have not. And this is going to be an interesting argument, because if in fact technology starts to become even partly accountable for the decision process, then what we need to learn as employers is we better be asking a lot of good questions of those employers, of the vendors, before we get into bed with them. Like, have you been in a suit? Do you use an independent service to deal with ensuring that the risk that we're using you for is mitigated by other independent algorithms, if you will? Those kinds of things, which all are questions that we've raised and put together in another common offering for RFIs and RFPs.
Yeah.
So if I might, I want to make 2 points. So first one is the 2 most scary words to any employer are class action. And that's what we have here too, right? It's not just that Mobley is suing Workday, it's that he is the lead plaintiff in a class. And that class could be hundreds, it could be thousands, it could be tens of thousands of candidates. If it's one person denied a job, okay, we were going to pay him $40,000 a year, write him a check for $120,000, and he goes away, and it hurts, but it's not going to show up in your shareholder reports at the end of the year, your stock price. But if you've denied 1,000 people or 10,000 people a job, now you've got a big problem. And I would think as a TA leader, you've got a problem because you're going to be out of a job and you might not be able to pay your mortgage next month. So that's one thing. The other thing is substitute the word Workday for Randstad or any other staffing company. Forever and ever, employers have been responsible for their staffing partners. If Randstad reviews 2,000 resumes and comes to you with a final group of, say, 5, and all 5 of those looked like the 3 of us, white dudes, right?
Mhm.
You know that the employer is going to have a problem, that it might be Randstad doing a screening and selection, at least the screening there. But at the end of the day, it's the employer's problem. It's Randstad's and the employer's. So what the EEOC is really arguing here is that Workday is acting as a staffing company. And now substitute Randstad for LinkedIn, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, any other job board where you might go do resume searching. If you type in, retail cashier and you put in your zip code to see what candidates are in your area that have done that work, and it ranks the 1,000 candidates and shows you the top 5, and those top 5 are white dudes, and you just contact those 5 white dudes, that's your problem as an employer because you've chosen to use LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, Indeed, whatever. So the job boards, I was just at a TA Tech conference. It's not just job boards, but it's largely job boards. I probably had 20 discussions with other job board leaders about this, CEOs, vice presidents, etc. Not a single one thought that this was a problem. It blew me away that it was like not even on their radar. And when I talked with them about it, they shrugged, and it's like, well, we don't choose who to hire. That's the employer. But when you talk to a lot of employers, it's the reverse. Well, it's not our technology, it's Workday's, it's Indeed's. So I think there's going to be this rude awakening that both organizations, the vendor and the employer, are going to discover we're both responsible here.
So
To
Steven,
some
let me.
degree, and that's
Well,
what the courts
but-
are going to have to decide.
But let me cap really quickly, if I could just put that super short. What we're saying is, if I go on to College Recruiter and I look for any type of candidates, I do a basic search for maybe just by the job title that I'm hiring for. I don't put anything else in. And College Recruiter
except we don't offer resume searching, so we're not going to.
fair.
But any other, just about any other job.
We'll make up a fantasy one, Schminkton. So I go on this platform called Schminkton. I do a search for whatever job I'm looking for, right? All I put in is the title.
Mm-hmm.
The order that those come back, you're saying that someone's on the hook for the order in which those are ranked or presented to me. Not today necessarily.
That's what the EEOC is saying. Yes.
But the challenge is that the way that they were presented, the order in which they were presented, if used anything other than the terms I entered, and then how my terms were entered, a complete accountability sits there. And we have never cared before about the rank they come back, because it's usually our first search, and then we filter, then we sort, then we filter, then we sort.
So I interviewed for one of my podcasts Commissioner Keith Sonderling, Commissioner of the EEOC. Okay. What became really obvious to me is that his position, and therefore that of the EEOC, is this has always been the law, and that employers always should have cared about this. The difference is that you now have somebody who was born in this century at the head of that agency, somebody who actually understands technology and is willing to fight for this. So previous commissioners didn't understand the technology or didn't prioritize this. Now, whoever replaces him, maybe they care, maybe they don't. But right now, if the EEOC is actually going to continue to care about this, then I think the vendors in our space and the employers using those vendors in our space also need to care.
Boy, that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of it from a historic point of view, but Steven, that is really good, because I do remember when SHRM really helped to correct, if you will, the original document that the EEOC had in 2001 that basically said, to your point, that you establish the criterion, and anyone above that criterion is equal, not ranked. You cannot rank beyond equal. You can have a cutoff, but you can't go beyond that. And then all of those become the pool, if you will, of qualified candidates from which one could determine whether or not over time, statistically, you're hiring in a way that's institutionally incorrect.
But you could define your own, but you had to document that definition. And then every iteration of your search thereafter on some point had to be documented. That was the whole, what's an internet applicant? They must meet these 3 of whatever criteria, but that kind of thing. So this is not a new thing.
Yep. That's a good point.
It's not new, and the fact that it hasn't been enforced before doesn't mean that it ever was legal, but we all got away with it. And it seems to me that we're about to not get away with it. It's kind of like that traffic signal a couple blocks away from your home. If you always rolled through that stop before, but now there's a cop who's parked there, your behavior is going to need to change because now there's going to be some enforcement there.
So is that what we're hearing? Is that what we're hearing, Steven, from the OFCCP, that they've been asleep at the wheel and now they got a guy in there who's awake? Is that, because that's what I hear you saying?
Absolutely. And the fact that the EEOC is supporting the class in this Mobley versus Workday case is, I think that's massively important, because the EEOC, being a federal government agency, basically can print money, right? Like theoretically, they have unlimited resources. And the fact that it's a class action lawsuit, that's going to attract a lot of plaintiffs' lawyers. If it was just one candidate going after one shop, so what? What I don't understand here from a practical standpoint is, where does this take us? So we've had one colloquium member who, in the RFP they gave us, asked us basically to assure them that all candidates that apply to their jobs, that we are sending all of those candidates to this employer equally. I get where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're also doing the same thing with their ATS. This may end up leading us back decades, in the sense that there needs to be a human who's going to review each and every application. That doesn't seem feasible to me for large employers. So I feel like
I don't think it goes in that direction at all.
I don't think so. I've heard some people say that. It's like, well, just manually review all of them. And it's like, well, if you're hiring 12 people a year, that works. If you're hiring 12,000 people a year,
whoever said that hasn't seen a recent funnel for any jobs posted in the last 2 years
for a large organization.
Yeah, these organizations. Yeah. The other thing is, I'm sorry, Steven, did you say colloquium?
Yes.
You have a colloquium now?
No, yours.
No, we do.
Oh, our yours. I'm like, what's going on over there?
One of your members is being particularly careful.
And I'm sure we have several that are being particularly careful.
Yeah. One that I saw.
What's the plan?
I feel like what's going to have to happen, I think that some of the vendors are probably busy at work at being able to provide that audit trail. So if you go into your ATS and the ATS can say, we ranked Sally 164th because of X, Y, and Z. I think that's going to be a huge step forward.
But is that if I'm a TA leader and I'm using new technology, the rules are still the same. The rules are still the same. They haven't changed. Mm-hmm. We have new toys, but the playground rules are the same. But we got to make sure those new toys abide by those rules. So what's the ask now? I'm rolling up to new vendors. I'm rolling up to a Workday or a whomever or a Schminkton, and I'm saying, I can't do any more searches until you can explain to me how they got ranked.
I think it's exactly the same ask as what we've been doing with staffing companies all along, right? If we're going to have Randstad or some RPO go through our applicants and present us with a list of finalists, they need to be able to explain why one candidate was ranked higher than another. And I think we've been doing that for decades with staffing companies. I just think the tech companies are now going to be held to that standard. Is that a bad thing? I don't think that's a bad thing.
I think you have to be accountable as the employer for auditing the vendors and suppliers who are serving you in whatever it is, trusting them 100%, even if their intention is that way, but not checking the data is a certain way for getting in trouble.
I agree to all things, but what I'm going to throw at you is that there's going to be a certain level of minutia you get to where organizations like a Schminkton say, I'm not explaining that to you. This is what you get. Member privacy, data private, whatever other bullshit an organization wants to come up with. But there will be a point where you can only drill down so far, and they aren't going to give that up. And that will be interesting to see if that is enough for.
So I'm going to push back on that because we were already at that point. None of the solutions providers are providing anything about their algorithm. That's proprietary. However,
it's proprietary, and they also don't understand their own technology.
Well, that's different.
And that's why some of the business, what the organizations will say it's proprietary, is because they're using AI, and because of that, they don't actually understand why one candidate ranks higher than another.
Right. I don't think that's going to be the case more often than not. But I'm sure that is in play at some organizations.
But there needs to be an independent group or groups who, in fact, a solution supplier will go to that independent group and say, here is my algorithm. You need to sign in blood, that you're not going to divulge that. and you need to test my algorithm against compliance issues, the European directive, et cetera, so that I can be assured that my PhDs who develop this algorithm aren't the ones also, attesting to the fact that it's compliant in every case. That's ridiculous. So fundamentally, we're going to find that that's going to happen. And it already is my point, in my opinion, and that will help the vendor to make sure that when the accountability comes due, their piece would be very small compared to that of the employer. That's going to be key, I think, long term.
I have to say, living in interesting times is tiresome.
We are.
Yeah.
Great.
It was so much easier when we just lived in caves and hunted saber-toothed tigers.
Yeah, it was the best of times. It was shit. Well, look, I know we want to wrap up. We've been on a little over 30 minutes. Steven, we'd love to have you on. I asked this question of everybody who comes to the show. Gerry and I want to know if you were going to write a book on this topic, if you were going to write a book on this conversation, what we've talked about here today, what would the title of the book be?
Millie and Vanilli, which one is better?
Girl,
which one is better, and how do you know, girl?
So present company excluded. Who gets a copy of your Millie the Vanilli in recruiting book? First signed copy.
Gerry sent me a copy of his book once I sent him a check. So I think
that's how transactions work in the United States, Steven. What we usually do is we pay for goods and services.
Well, actually, and I guess I recently found out that the book that I got, the Career Crossroads, like version 187 or edition 187 or whatever it was actually sent by Mark, not Gerry, because Gerry apparently was the smart one in that.
Yeah, Mark drew the short straw, and they were all in Mark's garage, if I remember right.
You have to imagine a truck going to Mark's garage and emptying 500 cases of this shit, and he has to hire every kid in 5 blocks to help him bag them, address them, stamp them, and get them to the whatever. We were selling
absolutely shocking that Mark exited that business before Gerry.
Right. Well,
Shocking.
Steven, you have to understand the difference. Mark was getting these trucks of books. Gerry was getting trucks of wine. You tell me who's going to stick around the longest. Yeah.
Millie.
First, he's vanilla.
I'm trying not to burn out my second partner. I'm trying not to burn out my second partner. That's really my goal in life.
I'm certain I will retire before you do. All right. Well, Steve, it's good to see you on. Steven, you also have a podcast that you do pretty regularly. You want to give that a quick plug before we let you go?
Sure. Yeah. On LinkedIn, there are a couple of them every other week. One is called the High Volume Hiring Podcast. And the other one is Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast.
Love it. And then I'll just let everybody else know. Certainly check those out. Those are words to listen to. You got some great guests on there as well, some good conversations. And I'll just remind everybody, we are out next week. We're going to be out at Spectrum's headquarters doing our employment branding, recruitment marketing meeting. We got about 40, 50 leaders that we're bringing together for that. So we're super excited, but we will miss this. So listen to a past episode or listen to this one again. Either way, it'll be fine. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to the CXR channel. Please subscribe to CXR on your favorite podcast resource and leave us a review while you're at it. Learn more about CXR at our website, cxr.works, facebook.com and twitter.com/careercrossroads, and on Instagram at careerxroads. We'll catch you next time.